I think we're on time. I'm Snigdha. I'm the product marketing manager here at CSI, an affiliate of Moody's, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone to our webinar today. Before we begin, I'll cover some housekeeping items. The ratings, financial analysis, projections, and other observations constituting part of the information contained herein are and must be construed solely as statements of opinion and not statements of fact or recommendations to purchase, sell, or hold any securities. We strongly recommend that you speak with a qualified financial advisor regarding your own unique circumstance. We also ask that no one record this webinar without Moody's explicit written permission. And lastly, no one has permission to quote any of the comments made or questions asked by the webinar audience. The webinar is being recorded and a replay will be available in the coming days. All members of the audience are currently on mute. If you have any questions, we encourage you to do so within the Q&A box, and we will only be addressing questions at the very end of the webinar. We also ask that you please keep your questions as generic as possible and avoid anything personal or client specific. Now on to the webinar. So we have
can I
two
just
experts.
add one more? Sorry, can I add one more housekeeping? Please consider this to be the conversation to be reflective of our own view. We don't always necessarily are representing the company's view on this. It's our own observations and perspectives. Often they're going to be consistent with with kind of how the company overall thinks about things, but not necessarily.
Thanks for adding that, Ari. So going back to our panelists for today, to give you a preview of their roles in the webinar today, I'll let them introduce each other for a change. And Rui, let's start with you.
Thank you so much, Snigdha. Excited to be here, excited to join Ari in this conversation. My name is Rui Barreto. I'm a director here at Moody's on the product solution side. Prior to my role here on Moody's, I was part of the CSI training and content development team, and excited to join this topic and talk through some thoughts with Ari.
Thanks. Would you like us to give us a glimpse into Ari's role as well? I just want the audience to get a sense of how you guys are going to be approaching the topic today.
Yeah, so are you asking me? Yeah,
I was asking Rui, but yeah.
I mean, I'll do it. I'll let Rui add whatever he. I don't want to put him on the spot here. I'll describe it, and Rui can add anything if he wants. So I run one of the divisions at Moody's, and it's a division that is associated with predicting and forecasting future performance of economies and companies and properties and various financial assets and in kind of collecting and using a lot of advanced capabilities to do that. One of them, and increasingly an important one of them, is kind of the latest kind of most recent adaptation of AI into language model, what we call GenAI, and so a lot of some of the more advanced capabilities we're developing are kind of areas that we are exploring in our world. And I would just note that in my prior role, I was very much involved with the Canadian financial advice market, and have close to a decade of working closely with the Canadian Securities Institute and local market participants, and have a very good appreciation for the types of challenges and that you're facing. And I note that Rui at some point was also in the not only part of the Canadian Securities Institute, but also before that was actually very much in the shoes of many of the people participating here. So so we're going to do to the extent we're going to make sure to the extent that we can to contextualize everything we talk about to kind of the way that ought to be relevant and applicable for the audience here.
Yeah, and if I could just add to what Ari has said, I mean, when I was working as an advisor, going through all of my clients and the size of the book and the size of the sheer number of clients, this is revolutionary as to where we are today and how we kind of look at what we've been doing over the past and all of that training that is constantly being pushed on, which is in that soft skill space. I'm hoping that after we kind of have our discussion that you're going to be able to conceive some concepts of how you can leverage AI to kind of improve your practice management techniques with your clients.
Thank you for the introductions. So again, thank you guys for joining us today for this very interesting topic. So I'll start with the basics and mention that with the buzz that we have about Gen AI currently, it does feel like something that's straight out of like a science fiction movie. But at the same time, it's also becoming a very real and very integral part of our daily lives. So, Ari, would you help us understand what Gen AI really is and just how significant it is? And as financial services professionals, should we be excited or cautious and maybe both? So, I'll let you have the stage on this one.
So my take on it is that, I'll just start with the middle one, which is like, I do believe it is a paradigm shift. It is very impactful. There's a general purpose capability, which introduces a wide range of new possibilities. Some people, I think most people recognize the positive aspects of it, but they do have some concerns around the potential negative elements of it. But I think we should be able to get to a point where in this discussion where we cover some of that. But as far as what it is, and at the risk of kind of those that are very familiar with it, finding it a little simplistic, I would, to me, the kind of the way to think about it, the first point here was, what is it? It's the use of artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, and a lot of it was associated with pattern recognition, associated with numerical information, and kind of that the ability to identify patterns in hard data or numerical, financial, quantitative data. I think that, well, I'd say that type of pattern recognition has been around and embedded in a lot of what is currently powering systems that everybody's using. What's really changed with Gen AI is the ability to apply the capabilities to language, and so if you think about at the heart of it is a very powerful model that capability that it extracts patterns from a lot of information and applies those patterns to kind of predict outcomes and predict and generate new content is I think that's quite unique and different. And many of you have heard that Gen AI in many ways could be distilled into a probability kind of model that looks at the at information and solves or tries to predict the next token or the next word that would follow a particular sentence or question, and I think that's kind of a simple way of describing it, but the reality is when you are actually looking at a deep learning model that learns all sorts of patterns around the world, and in this case language related patterns, and attempts to predict the next word or the next sentence depending on how you set it up. um, in the process of doing that, it to be able to do the best job that it can, it actually has to build some kind of a world model, a way of understanding a lot of, and I use the word understanding in quotes. It's like they don't truly understand. They act, but these models, but for all intents and purposes, you can say that they do, because however it manifests itself, it is a form of understanding. Um, and so in order to be able to figure out what the next um, word or sequence of words, you really have to develop so much knowledge about the world and understanding, and that's kind of the power that it brings to the table. Is you can now, it's what makes it feel like magic, because you're communicating with it, and it actually seems to be incredibly good at generating content that you wouldn't normally expect a computer to do. That is because of that, the process of training. It involves building kind of such a depth of understanding, and of the way the world works. So I think there's that kind of concept is what many people probably on this call have experienced by interacting with a conversational kind of chat application. And what is starting to become very clear is that the lens with which most people see Gen AI, through this chat interface that ask questions and get really good responses, is somewhat of a limited view of thinking about the implication of what it can do. Because in a way, if you think about an ability to effectively reason through um, yeah, reason through problems, it often is not strictly linked to a conversation, but it's linked to the ability to look at information, reason about it, com um, conclude certain things from it, and pass that information, not strictly, not necessarily to you as the user right away, but maybe to another AI application or model that takes that and applies it in another related area, and as a source of information, and you can kind of think of it as powering a system of cognitive intelligence architecture, thinking that automates that can automate workflows where historically or traditionally those have required a lot of human intervention in the mix to make those judgments and reasoning inferences. And so it is much more than a conversational agent. It is really a gateway into a world of more automation and more autonomy in some aspect of what we do. And so naturally, when people think about it and they see and they work through some examples on their own, and they use it to help themselves craft emails or messages or edit, and kind of they see the magic that happens. In a way, they get nervous about, well, boy, there's a lot of things that could go wrong on many dimensions. Not one is, you know, it could cause it. I mean, I guess some reactions like, is it going to get to a point where my job is not necessary, or is it going to get in the hands of the wrong people, and is it going to produce information that's not exactly right and misleading, and people rely on it and ends up, so there's also, there's reasons that I think a lot of people have a sense of some aspect of dread around where it leads, and in my mind, I'm very, very much of the view that there's the I don't like to say the right way of doing it, but the way I think about it, in a way that is probably, I think, is appropriate way to think about it is, it is not. I'm not dismissing some of the concerns. I think some of them are a bit over. There's a bit, too much focus on the negative, where I see so much positive in the way that people can use it to improve the way that they operate and remove some of the tasks from the way that they operate that are not um, as important as some of the other kinds of work that they could do that will meaningfully scale their own ability and enhance their own ability to do their work, give them more time, which I think is the way that Rui thinks about it. So I'd like to hear Rui's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct, Ari. I mean, when I think about AI, and the first time I used AI, it was exactly what you described. It was a prompt. It was really just, what do you want me to do for you? And I don't. You can think of it as a technological robot or a technological assistant, but it's really a prompt, and you tell it what you want, and it will go out and try to grab as much of the requirements that you've asked it to do and bring it back to you in a curated way that they feel that you want to kind of ingest it. And as Ari pointed out, it is a learning tool. So as you use it, it is going to learn more and more as you continue to use it. If I think about myself, and I don't know if others have this experience, on my phone, if I book an appointment on my calendar, I now have this AI tool that basically says to me as I get close to the appointment, your meeting is in the next hour. Given the level of traffic, you may want to leave now in order to get there on time. It doesn't feel like anything's changed. I see it as a great feature, but that's all driven by AI. AI has now curated my calendar so that I can get to my appointments on time. And whether I use that for personal or business or both, I now have a better way of kind of communicating with clients and being able to ensure that I'm going to be where I need to be on time, because I have an AI engine telling me that based on traffic. And it could be pulling data from Google. It could be pulling data from some of those other travel apps. But the great thing is it's improving my ability to connect with clients. And that's just one way. Obviously, I already touched on a number of things on, how do you want to communicate with your clients? What do your clients expect of you? Well, this is something that AI can help, coordinate and curate on how you approach your clients. And these are just a few things. And I know we have a few other questions. And I think once we get through the other questions, it's all going to tie back to what Ari just pointed out. It's a tool. It's a way to give you back time and to kind of think about everything that you've ever wanted to kind of improve, or anything that you've thought that if I've had this, I would be able to connect with my clients so much more efficiently. That's what I see AI as. And I think as we continue our conversation, it'll resonate.
So that applies both to the comment I made about there's a way to think about it as a conversational tool, which is a way for you to interact with it and enhance what you do, but it also applies to the way I was describing it as a way of automating certain things that you do to give you more time because a lot of what it's going to be automating for the foreseeable future are things that, in a way, if they can be automated, that it's probably a good thing that they get automated, because they're generally not the kinds of things that most of you would necessarily find the most valuable ways that the most important drivers of your success. In many ways, they're elements of what you do that are ingredients into helping you. And if those ingredients are automated, then you get access to them, you know, uh, faster and maybe even in a more robust way than before.
Yeah. Yep. Completely agree.
That was really insightful. Thank you for giving us that glimpse into what it really is. Um, but talking about the technological aspects, like there's always technologies that come and go, and while some fade out, others do stay around long enough to truly redefine how we work. One thing I can think of is how over the pandemic, like Zoom and like Teams and tools like this, these are just like our everyday companions now. A couple years ago, we weren't really thinking about them like that, but here they are, truly ingrained in how our workday goes. So, just on that spectrum, where do you think AI falls? Can advisors still afford to kind of sit this out and not worry about it? Or is this, again, something that's changing how they work?
Rui, what do you think, Rui?
Uh, I I don't think you can ignore it. I think if you choose to ignore it, you're at a disadvantage because your clients are using it. And whether you feel that there is a functionality in it because you haven't tried it or you haven't quite figured out how to apply it into your practices or into your day to day, I think ignoring it is not something that you want to do. Your clients are using it. And the one thing, if you recall, over the years, and Ari, I think we've talked about this, the backyard barbecue. You've tend to barbecue, you meet your brother or you bump into your cousin, and everybody's got this investment idea that they think they need to be part of. What Gen AI has actually done is enhance those environments for clients. So whether they're meeting people and researching it, the fact that there is an access to a Gen AI tool that they can get information as quickly as, call it 5 to 10 seconds, and have it in such a degree that it's almost too impossible to ignore, are things that advisors have to take into account as they're meeting with their clients. Before, a client would go online, they would have to research a topic, and that topic would usually be 1 to 3 items because it is quite complex to kind of figure that out. With Gen AI, they're now going in and they're able to get an entire potential financial plan beginning to end and leveraging that in a conversation with an advisor. So clients are coming in that much more educated without that much more work. And so we've seen the evolution of what Gen AI has done. And I say evolution because it hasn't been that long. And Ari, what is AI now really in its, 2 years, would you say?
AI, Gen AI in its particular, um, you know, uh, kind of generation of AI that it is become accessible to the market overall in the last 2 years. It was, it was available before, but more in development and for a smaller audience. But it's definitely become, um, you know, you know, available to everyone to take advantage of. So yeah, it's been a very short time. I would say we'll kind of take this and I hope people don't take it the wrong way. I don't mean to be too provocative here or fear mongering here, but you know, I do firmly believe that there's another way to think about it where you ignore it at your own risk in the sense that the expectations will be that that you will be using it and often the customers will be using it, and certainly other organizations with financial advisors and their financial advisors may be using it, and the fastest way to not keeping up and making yourself less relevant in this market and less able to serve your customers in the way that they expect. And um, I guess my point is you know, I don't think that there's an option at this point. but to
I,
use it.
yeah, I agree. And just add to Ari's point, if you choose to ignore it, the expectation is that your competitors are using it.
Yeah.
And in a society where information on, even things such as the stock market is moving so quickly, advisors that adopt it into their practices are able to communicate quicker, faster with their existing clients, as well as solicit new clients. So those that are not using it and not accessing the power of the GenAI tool to gather the required information to service their client base, they will find that competitors are going to, and they are going to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Um,
Yep.
Snigdha,
That
should we?
was, yeah, yeah. That was again, thanks for highlighting the role it's playing now as a tool. However, like whenever a new tool comes along, it can feel a bit intimidating. Like you said, Ari, it might feel like it's here to replace what uh, we as professionals are doing. But what I'm also gathering here is that it's not really here to directly compete. It's more so to collaborate. Um, so I do want to discuss a bit about how can advisors make it their ally and harness its potential to make their work easier and more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a fun topic,
Yep.
and I'm gonna let Rue, if it's okay, tee
Yeah.
this up. You know.
Well, so I was in the industry for a long time, and even on the training and content side of CSI, and a lot of it was on practice management, and the technical comes. You learn your products, you know what your products are, you know what your competitors' products are. And so then it comes down to how do I effectively manage my book of clients? And when I started way back when, the key and buzzword was segmentation. So if you can imagine, 1,000 clients, how do you break up those 1,000 clients so that you can work more efficiently with each of those clients, but do so in a group setting? So if you have clients that like high risk, you put them into the high risk segment, and then you kind of build a number of segments into, eventually where low risk clients are. If you think about Gen AI, imagine segmenting it even beyond risk, right? You can segment it by risk and life events. And you can actually ask the tool to combine the two and figure out another form of segmentation so that you can cater and curate, marketing that's more specific to clients' needs, right? So if clients are high risk investment clients and they're comfortable with high risk and they've just started a family, they've just gotten into a mortgage, how can you communicate with a group of individuals that's more curated to that group versus somebody who's 60, heading into retirement, sitting on a ton of assets, and now you're dealing with a high net worth client, but also a high net worth client that's going into retirement versus a client going into retirement that may not be in the high net worth space, still not at risk, but a different approach for two different kinds of clients, both heading in the same direction. It's really taking the tool, and in my opinion, Ari, and please jump in, is if you think about all of the ways that you've ever wanted to communicate or look at your book of clients and segment or work with them separately, it's that one efficient tool that once leveraged correctly, it can make your practice a game changer. If you're in the business or just getting into the business, the tool would work in one way. So Gen AI would work to kind of help you build that book, identify opportunities, and look at leads, and how would I reach out to somebody who's 25 versus somebody who's 50. And Ari can talk about how the tool can curate different dialogues for different clients at different life stages. But how do I kind of quickly deal with clients who are maybe at risk? How do I manage that? And this is where Gen AI gives you that quick, fast way to kind of leverage tools to manage your practice that much more quickly, effectively. And if the idea is to grow it, this is how you do it. But it gives you the way to look at your book in so many different ways. And I looked at my book slightly different than say Ari did when he was in his when he was in his role of client management. But there were always things that I wanted to kind of work on, or things that I wanted to focus on, that unfortunately, by the time you get through dealing with one client, researching what they're coming in for, having the conversation, booking a follow-up meeting, then sending out a follow-up email with all of the information that the client asked for, that could take up to 2 days by the time you kind of get it all crafted, curated, emailed back to the client. GenAI can grab all of that information, curate it for you, do a grammatical check for you, and basically package it up, send it off to your client probably by the afternoon, if you have time to ask the GenAI tool for uh, for the support. In saying that, over the last couple of years, and Ari, please jump in if you need to, but over the last couple of years when I was on the training side, the one thing that the banks have always kind of came back to us and the financial firms is, how do I provide more soft skills? How do I kind of open the door for advisors to have, meaningful conversations, or, find time to reach out to clients or segment their practices? This is Gen AI in its best form. This is a prompt that you can ask it to do that for you, and it will do all of that imagination that you've always wanted for your practice.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just going to pause there for you.
Yeah, it is. I always think of it. I kind of wrote a recent paper on it that you can think of this as a partner in your work, a collaborator, is a mechanism that you can interact with to around so many different areas of what you're trying to do. And I kind of think of it as like a way to superpower you, because it also helps you learn and get smarter about things that may have been more difficult to learn and get up to speed earlier. And so really thinking about it as, I have this really capable member of my team that is like attached to me, and I can work with it to build to kind of plan and for my own time, plan my come up with ideas, uh, you know um, think about a better way for a certain clients or group of clients to um, consider different ways of managing their life events and their financial future. And so, thinking of it as a partner is a very healthy, I think, way of, and I think realistic way of thinking about it. It is, it is interesting that, Rui, you use the word tool. I kind of think of it as a capability, because, when I think of tool, I think of like, okay, there's one tool, and in kind of, a lot of the organizations that many of you are in, if not all of you are in, will make certain capabilities associated with this tool available to you. So it's not really, when we think of tools, not ChatGPT. It's various ways of that your own organizations are adapting it to make it easier for you to kind of turn it into a partner for you, and in some cases, in many ways, a partner for your customer. And you're coming in and you have some kind of presumably a lot of customers are going to be using it too, and so you're coming in with a certain level of shared understanding as the start of a relationship or start of a conversation. And then your role is, now that we know the information, I can tell you a little bit about how to, I might help you adjust it, fine tune it, because I have a lot more experience in asking it the right questions and probing it and testing it and looking at different scenarios and whatnot. But then I can also, well, maybe I should actually ask Rui, what is it that you think that, um, assuming that you have this powerful capability in your hand, and so do your clients, where is it that you can now, with a lot of that research being done on your behalf, a lot of um, insights are shared and understanding of where is it that a financial advisor brings now, with the extra time that they have and the extra intelligence insight that they have, where is it that they add value?
Uh, yeah, that's a great question. And you know what, Ari, I love your comment on it's a collaborator, because I think that's exactly what it is. Um, I know with clients and the way they come in, and the way and time that you have to research, whether it's product, whether it's different life stages, and what becomes a focus at a specific life stage, and how much time do you have to really dive into a client that you meet maybe twice a year, once every 6 months or once every 12 months. And so how do you kind of take what you've learned in those few meetings and basically expand on it? Um, there's no better way to kind of continue to communicate with your clients throughout the year, um, using Gen AI to kind of support that. You know what your clients are invested in, or what they're looking to plan towards, right? I'm looking to plan towards retirement, or my child needs to go to school in 5 years. Gen AI is a great way for those clients that you don't see every single day to build a stronger, tighter relationship with them by just asking Gen AI to, again, go and grab you information that makes sense for conversations or things that you spoke to your client about, and making them relevant. It's also a great way to curate emails based on those topics that really doesn't take very long. Even something as simple as, taking an email that you want to send to a client, especially a high net worth client, and sending them an email that isn't grammatically correct. Well, there's no reason for that. Clients, when they read emails, they're skimming them and saying, should my million or 5 million or $10 million be with this advisor who doesn't spend enough time even putting an email together? So this is one of those things where clients don't see how busy you are. They don't see how, you're in the office, you need to get out to meet clients, to build your business, and you don't have as much time as you'd like in a day to kind of get this all done. Gen AI is a great way to kind of supplement a lot of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I guess where I was kind of trying to think, kind of help the audience think about is beyond the kind of making you more effective and have more information at your fingertips, and
Yeah.
but where do you then add this extra value? And kind of, I'll throw a statement that may feel potentially provocative. I don't know, but I there's an element of a financial plan, and kind of an element of here's kind of the factors and how much you need to save and what needs to happen. Some of those decisions associated with it are difficult, they're multifaceted, they're not the most, they're not, they're you know, to me, kind of AI has a bit of a clinical assessment of the
Oh, sorry, I think we lost you, Ari.
So can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So in some way, I think of like AI in helping you has a bit of a clinical view as to what is the optimal ways of operating. But clients have, there's an emotional element of decisions. There's considerations that are related to, you know, um, personal sensitive dynamics within the family, and the um we and I think a lot of what financial advisor can help is is how do you make a decision that's difficult to make, and how does that kind of um and how do okay, well, am I going to have to reduce my spend now, and do I have to downsize in order to, so there's a lot of tough things that they have to go through that AI is going to be
Yeah.
is going to struggle to really understand that those subtle but very important emotional and kind of aspects of making difficult decisions. What do you
Yeah.
think of that?
No,
I'll
I agree. I think even as simple as cash flow analysis or cash flow assessments to try to figure out how to kind of assist a client in saving money towards an actual goal. It's going to be so much quicker and so much faster to be able to have those conversations. Again, they're still going to be sensitive because there's going to be items in those discussions that become a little bit more difficult to have. But you're absolutely correct. There's so much that we can leverage in regards to how we use this towards that emotional side as well.
Yeah. No, I don't
I'll
mean leverage. I mean that's where an advisor comes in, is what I mean. I mean the information and the analysis and the work that AI does isn't necessary. What you bring to the table that's unique is there personal connection and trust that you build with
Yeah.
your because you're able to guide them through these difficult decisions, not just tell them, you got to, you're going to have to sell your house, you can't afford it, you're going to have to no, you understand that this is an emotional challenge, and that the trade-offs are not strictly about financials. There's kind of family implications. There's, you can just move to a lower cost there. It's like, helping them through that. I think that's where a lot of the unique value also beyond what you were saying that
Yeah.
an advisor brings to the table.
It's funny that you said that because I remember back when robo advisors were basically created, and that same buzz of, my clients are all going to go to robo advisors. They don't need me, and it's exactly what you said. I think Gen AI will go out. It will grab what you ask it to grab, and the clients will come in and say, "Wow, this thing knows me perfectly." But it does require an advisor to educate their clients that it is going out and grabbing data, but it's not necessarily that data is going to apply to you. It does still need somebody to communicate what was actually being provided when that data was gathered, and how does that data actually impact you as a client. And here's what we know about you, and here's what we were working towards. And so we can take what you brought me, but let's really dive deeper into what that data is telling us, and whether or not it applies or how it applies. I think you're
And
absolutely correct.
I want to emphasize this one point you made, and just it's just to make sure it's not getting lost. We had a very live experiment with robo advisors that we've run through now for several years as to uh, can they actually replace the role of an advisor? And emphatically, the message was, you know what, there needs to be people gravitate toward that human person. I think it's genetic. They want to be able to speak to a person about these challenges, and I think that's largely why the profession across other markets, not just Canada, U.S., that we haven't seen robo advisors, you know, generationally, even across generations, um, um, replace that important role that you as an advisor bring to the relationship.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. So the question that I'm going to bring up next, I think we've covered in part, but again, I'd like you guys to kind of summarize what you've mentioned because, like we discussed, now that Gen AI is taking on some technical capabilities, even the delivery to some extent, and clients are aware that it's taking on those capabilities and deliveries. What do you think? Like, what are the values that, like Ari asked, clients are going to expect now? more so. Now that we think of a trusted advisor, what's that going to look like for clients?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me start a little bit because it's the thing
Mhm.
is more for Rui, but I think that and we covered some of it, but I think
Yep.
the emphasis here is that when your customers come in, we've seen this over the years with the internet and access to information. They have been coming in with more information, armed with more data, um, and so it does to some extent raise the expectations and standard of a financial advisor. But I'd say equally so, what we have observed from uh, past experience and even kind of not necessarily salt within the world we're in and the paradigm we're moving into is there is even more information, and there's an element of so much information that the more it's out there, the more you need somebody to make sense of it all for you. It's almost like counterintuitive. It's like, you know, where too much information creates even more stress, confusion, and a need for somebody to say, what's important here, really? Rui, what's your take on it?
I think you said it exactly how I would have said it. I mean, I could pull up information on how to fix and change the brakes on my car. Would I trust myself to do it? Probably not. I would take it to an expert. Would I trust changing the brakes on my daughter's car? Definitely not. I would take that to an expert. And I think it's exactly what Ari just pointed out is that clients are going to come in and it's not that they haven't come in the past. They have come in and they've brought in a ton of information that they were able to research on web pages. Gen AI is going to increase the level of that information, but this is your opportunity to really add, and I think Ari, you said it best, is what is that value of that client working with you? And it's somebody to decipher all of that information, assess whether it's actually, able to work with what a human being knows about their clients, right? Gen AI is not human. Gen AI will return back a response that you ask it. It doesn't know when a life event happens, the passing of a parent and having to deal with the funerals and all of those costs that are associated with. Gen AI is not going to know in advance. It doesn't predict the future. It really just goes out and grabs the data. And so there is going to be more information that clients are going to come in with. And how you take that information is what the client is going to be testing you or looking to you for advice on whether or not this makes sense. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, well, why doesn't it? And what is a better response? But exactly what you said, Ari. I think this is exactly that point in time where I think advisors are probably going to be leaders, even though Gen AI is giving a lot more work to the advisor, but as well at the same time, it's going to be able to kind of curate and save that advisor that much more time. So it's almost a double-edged sword that is working to the benefit of everybody.
Thank you for that. So, moving on to our final leg before we address some of the questions that we got. Um, by now, we know that the industry is not a stranger to change, but Gen AI is definitely shaking things up in a bigger way than in the previous years it has been. So, do we have any comments on how you guys think it's going to revolutionize the industry? Um,
Wow.
If you, Ari, do you mind if I just quickly jump in first?
Yeah,
And
please. That's a big one.
for me, I haven't. I mean, when we say the word, it feels like something that's coming that is here, but not yet at its full capability. The truth is, and Ari, you said it at the beginning of our meeting, is we're already using it. We just haven't recognized it. Just like the example I have where my calendar tells me what time I should leave in order to be at my appointment on time. I didn't even realize that that was there. It just got turned on and it's improved my day because now I put everything into my calendar and it tells me exactly how to kind of get to my appointments on time so that I'm never late or miss one. but I think it's always been here. Maybe just at a
Yeah.
different capacity, Ari.
Yeah. So I'm not I'm not disputing this. I do think that the way that it's been here, um, and we obviously adjusted to it very relatively smoothly. I think it's coming in. It's going to actually move into a more kind of dramatic shift over the coming years in terms of this version of it. So the fact that it's been here, where you see algorithms that are governing a lot of, um, you know, a lot of the activities, interactions that you have in social media and buying purchases, and I do think this is a slightly different flavor, and I do believe that there's all sorts of vectors of change that are going to happen that in previous kind of um, generations of the technology were not available. I do think that there's is going to be a level of like we talked about, kind of just reassessing where you add value and some repetitive lower level things that can be done will be automated. And so you have to kind of step up and raise your game and really think about where do I uniquely add this kind of element that makes me indispensable to this relationship. I think we are seeing increasingly now certain aspects of certain job roles that are more heavily oriented around doing repetitive tasks and things that are not significantly associated with important decisions. We are seeing some of those, like certain aspects of customer service that can be automated. And I think there's going to be um, a shift in an important shift in the way that the financial services industry will be able to um, introduce a more personalized and direct relationship with a user of the technology that that will challenge further the way that that a human coming into the picture might. So might kind of add value in that story. So what I mean by that, to give you some examples, um, the the capabilities that financial institutions are building, where they have a good understanding through the data that they collect about individuals and businesses, understand kind of how they how they use it, what kinds of questions they ask, the kinds of concerns that they have, and provide to them targeted kind of capabilities and stories and messages that feel much more bespoke or much more personalized to their particular situation. The technology will get much better at actually being able to make somebody feel like it is actually speaking to me much more. That personalization aspect of AI is going to be, at this point, should be legitimately viewed as a sort of uh, competition for the services of a financial planner, financial advisor. And none of this changes what we were saying earlier. it simply illustrates the significance of the self-reflection around what is it that makes it important for somebody to work with me. And even if the technology capability feels like it knows me, it won't know you the way I will know you and be able to guide you. And I'm convinced that there's a way to do that. And I'm convinced that I always I always use the example that Rui provided on Robo-Advisor, but I mean a more simple example. I mean, maybe it trivializes it a bit, but you know, if you think about, but it might help think about it. If you have, when people kind of say, well, you, people can go to a bar and you can have a robotic arm serve their drinks. Why do we need a bartender? And it's like, well, you know what? We've obviously seen zero evidence, and it's perfectly, accessible now to replace all bartenders with a robotic arm that mixes drinks. But the bartender serves this other way of connecting with an audience, with a customer that elevates the value that they place on coming to an establishment and having that interaction with them. There's a certain element of entertainment, there's a certain element of listening, there's a certain element of empathy, there's a certain element, so I do think that there's going to be a very big shift, but I think um, in some ways, I tend to take a somewhat of a contrarian view to a lot of people, that where the more technology comes into our lives, there's this counterintuitive, it, you know, enhanced value that their relationship with an individual brings. And I kind of sometimes think of it as, when when AI beat chess masters in chess, it actually made the value of watching humans play chess even greater. When you introduce
Yeah.
now images that can be generated with AI, I think human generated art will actually become more valuable, similar to the way when photography came in, paintings still became valuable, even more valuable. So that human element is something that we innately, it's in our DNA, we value more. And with the more technology inundates us, the more people will seek that kind of human element of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could just add, I think if you add Gen AI and overlap it on the Robo Advisor, would that have clients change from client-facing advisor to a robo advisor? I'd probably say no. Clients that are working with advisors are doing that for a reason, because that human element that Ari just pointed out is what the value is in the offer.
Yeah, there's often a question that comes up, and as to whether or not that's a generational question, where okay, you know the next generation, as they come up with AI as being kind of like the generation that grew up with computers, they'll grow up with AI. Are they going to be as as attuned to the human element of it, similar to in the U.S.? You certainly see. Um, and I think to some extent it's true in Canada as well. Like, people don't necessarily, um, the younger generation or isn't as predisposed to going into a branch. They're more comfortable with AI. I still believe that even in that context, it may require a different way of reaching them and making that connection,
Yeah.
because they may not seek it on their own, but once they understand once they get it, once they experience it, I think the DNA, our social instincts will kick into play, so they don't disappear over generations.
Thank you for that. Excellent conversation today. Thank you. Thanks a lot, both of you, Ari and Rui. And we don't have time to address a lot of questions, but I do want to bring up an important one that we also got in the chat, which is what about privacy considerations? Um, should advisors be concerned about the privacy and security in case they input data related to their clients' situations? And what are any are there any workarounds for that?
I mean, I'll just say that most organizations you're in will be making sure that the information that you're using will be protected, and everything that we do at Moody's is informed by that concern that we have and our customers have, and the technology is there to make sure that that is not a, a a concern that they should have. But it is very important for financial advisors to assure their customers um, that that and give them a real concrete answer as to why they should not worry about that. Now, if you are going not using a company and protected kind of AI environment, you certainly have to be much more mindful about entering information that is sensitive and private. And frankly, I would look to your organization to tell you how much their own systems are self-contained and private, and don't go back and don't leave the organization, which is mostly the way it works. But I would take the cue from them, and I'm sure they will guide you the right way on how to think about it. But my general view is that you should not be using AI tools that your organization hasn't sanctioned to include information that is sensitive and private, and anything like that. Absolutely, there is a concern if it's not sanctioned by your organization.
Yep. Thank you for that. So we are sadly out of time. So I would mention that if we were not able to address your question, you can always reach out to us using support.csi.ca, and we will try our best to get back to you. And this concludes our event. Again, thank you everyone for your participation and the thoughtful questions that we
There's
got.
some really good questions here.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see if you're able to forward some to you and then maybe create a bit of a resource for everyone. But again, thank you so much. And we will have a recording available in the coming days. So that's always there. And again, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Thanks, Ari and Rui, for
Thank
your
you, everyone.
time. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.